I really use attractive character to step into something bigger than myself to be able to perform. That helped me tremendously. And the attractive character that I've used if I'm struggling to go on stage is called Magnetic Maya Vic. Maya for
Mhm.
Maya Angelou and Vic for Queen Victoria. And I also use Totem, and it helps me to have a reset if I'm having difficulties on stage. I was able to use the ring when I was giving my talk, and most of the people in the audience were older white folk, and
Mhm.
they were taking notes on me like crazy, barely looking up. And I had this feeling like they taking notes from me. And
Wow,
so
right.
I had to reset, and I use a totem to reset, to step back into that attractive character, say, yes, I am powerful. I am supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be an inspiration. And so there's
Mhm.
so much more to an attractive character and a totem, but it really helps you be and do something bigger than yourself.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition, a podcast about making the most of the changes we're given. As a married father of 3 teenagers, a longtime global business executive, and adventurer, I've been through hundreds of transitions in my life. Many have been difficult, but all have led to a depth and richness I could never have imagined. You'll get to hear all about them on this podcast so that together we can create more love and joy in our lives, no matter what transitions we are going through. Welcome back to Life in Transition podcast. I have an amazing guest with me today. Her name is Maggie Cook, and she has, I think, the most amazing story I have witnessed. I've had the pleasure of getting to know someone, amazing transformation story from where she's come from, and an amazingly big heart, and also happens to be founder of Maggie Salsa, which sold for over $200 million as well. But that's not who she is. It's much more than that. And now she is an amazing public speaker as well. And I'm really excited to have you, Maggie. Really blown away by your story and excited to have you here on Life in Transition podcast. Most welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be with you too.
So let's jump in, as I always do, with the first question, which is what do you feel like? I mean, I've given a lot of preface to your overall story, but what do you feel like is the most relevant, the most recent or meaningful transition that you would like to talk about today that's been a really big impact on your life?
Yes, this has been something that I actually haven't talked about at all. And it's something that happened to me last year. I was about to speak in one of the most prestigious platforms in the United States, the Million Dollar Roundtable, top of the table. These are the millionaires, billionaires globally.
Wow.
And I was backstage and I fainted and I had no idea what was going on. I'm strong, I'm healthy,
Right.
but I didn't know that I was going through the transition of menopause. And so I had so many issues with, later I found, with hormones and my thyroid.
Hmm.
And luckily, I was able to do an intervention right before I went on stage, and I don't know how I got through that 45-minute talk, but I got through it, and people were really happy with the presentation, but it created a spark, a new interest, a new direction into really looking at my health at this stage and starting to not only look inside, getting doctors, but starting to apply things or starting to do things differently than what I've been doing for the past, 44 years.
Right.
So it's certainly that was one of the most impacting things that I had to transition into. And I'm learning still today and growing. I'm still going through protocols, medical protocols, and different things. But one very important thing is mindset. But I tell you one thing, if your health is not well, you
Mm.
cannot perform, even mentally. Even mindset becomes even more harder to apply because your body doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel like it can continue on, just basic things throughout the day. You really need to take care of your health. And this is one thing that I've learned this past year.
Oh, wow. No, I think that's super important and something I've been through as well. I want to go back to something specific you said, Maggie. You talked about being at this huge event and fainting and then having to go on stage right afterward. And you said, I did an intervention, which allowed me to get through that. Do you mind sharing what was the intervention that allowed you to carry through that next hour that was, a very high profile hour, if you will?
Yes. So I did two things. One was I called a doctor whom I know and speed dial, and he was able to have me apply certain pressure points on my body. and create a it was like a release and a balance. But
Mhm.
the other thing that I did was I really use attractive character to step into something bigger than myself to be able to perform.
Mm.
And that helped me tremendously. And the attractive character that I've used if I'm struggling to go on stage is called Magnetic Maya Vic. Maya for
Mhm.
Maya Angelou and Vic for Queen Victoria. And I use that, and I also use, totem, like a totem, and it helps me to have a reset if I'm having difficulties on stage, and I do it with this ring, and I also do it with this my Queen Victoria Mont Blanc pen.
And right?
And especially, I was able to use the ring when I was giving my talk, and most of the people in the audience were older white folk, and
Mhm.
they were taking notes on me like crazy, barely looking up. And I had this feeling like, they taking notes from me? And
Wow,
so
right.
I had to reset, and I use a totem to reset, to step back into that attractive character, say, "Yes, I am powerful. I am supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be an inspiration."
Mhm.
And so there's
Mhm.
so much more to an attractive character and a totem that we could go deep into, but it really helps you be and do something bigger than yourself. It helps you to
Mhm.
step into something bigger so that you can actually, because an attractive character are people that you wanna model,
Mhm.
that traits that you wanna achieve or get there,
Mhm.
and when you step into that, you sort of become this, and
Mhm.
what happens when you step into this attractive character is that because you become a different person, maybe you dress differently, people might say, "Okay, you look weird." They're not used to change, so they might put you down, and
Right,
then you
they're
feel
used to their
comfortable.
old Maggie, their old friend, their old colleague.
Right, and the other person that'll put you down is yourself, because you
Mhm.
might tell yourself, "I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy to be in the stage."
Yeah.
And so this is when a reset like this can happen, and this totem, this ring was given to me by one of the most ancient tribes in Mexico dating back centuries. The eldest person, the wise man of the tribe, he found out what I was doing to rescue children from human sex trafficking, and he said, "We made this ring from stone of a river. It's been blessed by us. Make sure you wear it on stage." And I was like, "This is a perfect totem to use." So when
Wow.
I was having those doubts on stage, I literally took a breath, took it out, put it back in, and boom, I'm back into
Wow.
that character.
So your definition of a totem is some physical thing that
Yes,
basically triggers, I'll say, an NLP reaction to
yes,
this aspirational figure in your mind,
yes,
which you called
yes,
Myovic, which I love.
yes.
Where did you learn to do that?
I've been doing this ever since I was in the orphanage to kinda stepping into a role
Mhm.
to because there was so much suffering, and for me was I was an adventurer, right? I either became like a powerful figure, like a hunter or an Indian, that a chief or something, and
Right.
I would use those things to help me get through the tough situations growing up. But what I've realized is that there are so many people, successful people, that have used it. A perfect example that I can think of right now is Adele. I don't know if people know this, but she used to have tremendous stage fright. She used to run off backstage because she was so scared, so afraid. And so what she did was she found out of Beyonce's Sasha Fierce, and she adopted Sasha from Sasha Fierce and Carter from June Carter, and she
Mhm.
uses Sasha Carter to step onto the stage to be able to perform. And eventually, you can merge with that into your own bigger thing.
Amazing.
And there's a lot of people have used it in the past. Marilyn Monroe used it, that she was Norma Jean, she stepped into that character
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
attracted a lot of people. And for totems, I just gotta name one person in history, very powerful person, and that is Martin Luther King.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't know this, but he used to wear glasses to write his speeches, and he didn't need them for seeing.
Oh, just because personifying that was a totem to trigger
Right.
a different persona to
And
come
he
out
became one of the he created the "I have a dream" speech, one of the most powerful speeches
ever.
ever.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. That's amazing. I had the pleasure of doing this leadership development intensive. That's why I was just leaning over to grab this book. And I had John Scherer, the creator of this from the Scherer Center, on the podcast a couple of months ago. And part of that is identifying your superpower. I remember the combination that I had for myself, which was the Wakanda star from the Marvel movie and Superman put together. Right, those two. So this super powerful African leader together
Yeah.
with Superman.
Here's the thing that I wanna say about Superman. Who do you think is the attractive character?
In
Clark
Superman.
Kent or Superman?
And that's a good question.
The attractive character was Clark Kent because he
Right,
had to blend in
right,
to be able
right.
to fit in society.
That's right. Yeah. No, that's right. There's also a lot of danger of being Superman. One of my issues when I was addicted to work and it's so crazy was because I was trying to be Superman all the time, right? Instead
Mm,
of just sort of calling on it when it
mm.
was needed. But I love this, and I know I've read a lot of research even about the college kids that are mascots. You know, the mascots in college sports. You played college
Yes.
basketball, right?
Yes.
Often the kids that are in those mascot costumes, they physically cannot do the things that they're doing in the mascot costume when they're not in costume. There's a whole research
Wow.
done on this. Like they're typically, I shouldn't say typically, in this research project, they had ones that were very shy, very reserved, and physically not that capable. But as soon as they put the mascot on, then they're doing flips and, back flips and forward flips and handsprings and all kinds of stuff that they
Yes.
literally could not do if they weren't wearing that costume.
Wow.
So that's both the personification of somebody as well as the totem by putting on
Mhm.
that costume.
Yes, it gives you some sense of confidence
Exactly.
when you trust that, and
Yeah.
then you become, and you can perform things that you never thought you could.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One other thing that I wanted to bring up from that point of going on to stage, Maggie, is you talked about then you also have yourself saying you're no good and you don't belong here, right? The imposter syndrome. And
Yes.
I just wanted to add one clarification from my experience. What I've come to is that that's not myself. I call it my critic. It's a part of me, and it's not even a
Yes.
bad part, but it's
Mhm.
not myself, and that gives it
Mhm.
less power.
Mm.
Right? To say, okay, here comes my critic to have something to
Yes.
say. Okay, what do we need to learn, critic? What's your purpose? What are you trying to get to here? Because usually, even the critic, in some way or another, is wanting to protect me, right? But I think it's important, and I found for myself, let's say, it's important to separate that critic from me,
Mhm.
so I don't call it me, but a subset of me, so that I
Yes.
realize that it's not who I am. Let's say.
Yes. Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
That's one thing I wanted to bring up too. Wow. So you had this intervention, you had the pressure points, which I get and I understand, and then you had these totems to bring you into your character of Myovic, which I love. I'm really curious. I'm going to get back into my LDI book over here and see what mine was and see if I want to update it or how I want to tune into it and what totems I want to make. And then what happened after that? So you got through the hour, you did well, use your skills, and I think it's also important to point out you're super successful. And still, when you're on stage, even at this $1 million round table, you still have imposter syndrome. You're still thinking, wow, what are all these old white dudes doing writing notes from me? But you use your tools to get through it. And that's a point
Yes.
I want to make too that everybody has those insecurities. Everybody
Mhm.
has those feelings from time to another. And the difference with you and where you've gotten to in your life is that you have your toolbox that you access and that you use when you need to
Mhm.
push through instead of stepping down and stepping back and shrinking when those things come up. I have this quote over here. I haven't read this on a podcast in a long time, but it's right under the glass on my desk in the studio here. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God, and you playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just within some of us, it's in everyone. And here's the key: as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give permission for others to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Wow.
Marianne Williamson, Return to Love. And that was quoted by Nelson Mandela. So everyone thinks it's Nelson Mandela in his inauguration speech in South Africa. But that's what I see you living that, which is
Mhm.
amazing in your story. So thank you for living,
Yes.
and being that inspiration.
Yeah, and I just wanna say that it doesn't matter where you are, where anybody is, you have the power to be able to see yourself, futurecast yourself into the person that you wanna become,
Mm,
and I did this since I was 8 years old. You probably watched my story video, and you see the cave that I lived in, and it was my secret hiding place. I built this cave in the side of mountaintop canyon that dropped by the size of the football field. The only way to get there was through crawling.
wow.
And there's another photo that I recently discovered, but somebody took a snapshot when I was 14 at the mouth of the cave, and I used this cave to futurecast myself, to see myself as a super successful woman with long hair, even though I have short hair,
Right.
with a suit, with heels behind a mahogany desk, even though I hadn't lived outside the barbed wire fence in the orphanage. And To say that I had a cave, I wanna say that everybody has an inner kingdom
Mhm.
that we can go into and that we can free ourselves by limitations of the world and then come out to the world and continue that journey,
Mm,
not letting anything hold us back, but trusting in how much power we have
mm.
within us to be and do something bigger than ourselves.
Right, so it's
Because
an inward
the
journey first,
yes,
and
the
then you bring that inward journey out into the world.
yes, everyone has a purpose, and that purpose is within each and every one of us.
Yeah, no, I believe that I'm doing a process right now called the Artist's Way, and in there she talks about that our creativity is God's gift to us. That purpose, that unique thing for us is God's gift to us, and what
Yes.
we do with it, what we give, what
Mhm.
we contribute from that creativity is our gift back to God.
I love that.
I thought that was pretty cool, and I see also in your video how you're doing so much work in Mexico now and have as an adult
Yes.
to help, and so you've used the gifts that God give you, you recognize them, you're using them to build businesses, to speak, but then also to go back and really help and give gifts to others as
Yes.
well. On this transition of health, like recognizing that health is really the most important, which started with losing some of it in a
Yes.
very pivotal time for you. What have you learned now? So that's been, what was it, a year? I can't remember. It was a year ago, 2 years ago,
Almost a year ago.
almost a year ago. So
Yes.
in that time in between, what have you learned from that reckoning of health, let's say?
I didn't know who to reach out to as far as where to start my journey, but I've been meditating and praying, and I asked God to show me, manifest someone into my life that could help me through this transition. And I learned not less than a month from that time of a company helping millions of people out there. And I started my process by doing lab work,
Mm,
and my labs looked terribly wrong, almost
right.
everything.
So this lab work
Everything
is understanding your blood, understanding your hormones, understanding the cycles through the day, all of this.
yes, and I started a journey of supplementation, started a journey of injections, and right now I'm doing about 3 to 5 injections a day, and some of
Wow.
these include NAD,
Mm,
include glutathione, include really powerful natural antioxidants alongside with protocols that I'm doing to balance my thyroid issues. My hormones have been balanced. So at this point, I
great.
feel like if I was gonna say that I'm between a 1 and a 10, the way that I feel right now, I would say I'm like an 8, 8.5, but
Okay.
I feel like I'm going to regain much more energy, and this is what I need to be able to perform
Right.
because performing to me is so important,
Right.
and it's been such an awakening to realize that mindset can take you so far, but your health can take you backwards if you don't do something about it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's something a lot of, and I mean, this is life in transition as a whole podcast, but a lot of what I deal with is midlife transition, which you're very much in right now with the menopause and the health issues. But there's so much that we do in our younger years where we ignore health because it's sort of a gift from God before we're 40 or 45 years old, right? We just have it. We spend all of our health to make money, zero game.
Yes,
Right,
yes, so
and the advice
mhm,
is to not expend the whole health in the first half, to stay in a sustainable, as Cal Newport says, work in a sustainable way. Take care of your health
yes,
because, like you said, if you, and I know it myself, I went through that as well. If you get to a place where you don't have health, you can't do anything else, right? You can't
yes,
contribute, you can't perform, you can't do the things that you love
mhm,
to do. It's easy to pretend we don't need sleep, pretend we don't need adequate nutrition and rest and exercise and connection and
yes.
relationships because we're busy living our dreams, but it all means nothing if you don't have
Mhm.
your health as a foundation.
And now the key is maintaining that, and just because you feel good now doesn't mean you should stop doing the things that you continue to do. So, labs every 3 months, food is medicine too, sleep,
Absolutely.
like you mentioned, I'm wearing a device called a Whoop, and so these things just really help you to especially because I love working out and I go really, really hard, and recovery is a big, big deal as far as energy goes,
Mhm.
and, I got a nutritionist now. And so all these things have been and this is something that I'm committed to taking on for the rest of my life because from now on, every month, your cells renew so rapidly. You become a new person in the sense of the flesh, right? In the sense of the
Yep.
health, the body. So you're always going to be changing, even dramatically now because you're aging.
Yes.
So it is so important to continue on that journey and stay committed because, like you said, it can take everything away from you. You
Yeah.
don't wanna spend the last years trying to recuperate your health. You
Right.
wanna live the rest of your years in joy and health and relationships and being able to spend that with your family, all these things.
Absolutely. I love Dr. Peter Attia's focus these days on health span, not lifespan. We've done a great job in America and the West of increasing lifespan, but the
Mm,
health span actually hasn't increased hardly at all. We're just saving the end of life, which is actually sort of miserable if you're in a wheelchair or bedridden or something
yes,
for 15 years. And he says very clearly the number one thing you can do to enjoy a better health span, no matter what your DNA is, no matter what markers you have, no matter if, like I have a little predisposition to Alzheimer's, for example, in my DNA, but no matter what you have, your VO2 max, your aerobic fitness, right? Getting out and walking or jogging, hiking, biking, swimming, whatever it is you like to do, but getting out and moving your body. If you move from the bottom quartile of VO2
mhm,
max for your age group up to the
mhm,
top,
mhm,
you reduce all cause mortality and sickness by
mhm.
50%.
And this is part of oxygenating your body.
Hmm.
So breath work, I do breath
Oh,
work
yeah.
all the time, and movement helps
Yeah.
you with do that to do
Sauna
that.
is or other breath work and sauna are also like proxies for exercise. Though I have to say, breath work to me, like I exercise all the time. I don't do breath work as regularly, a few times a week. And breath work does something more with the emotions as well. I mean,
Yes,
I come up, all kinds of stuff comes up for me when I do breath work. A lot of
yes.
sadness, a lot of joy. I mean, all kinds of stuff comes up, which is really useful as well.
There's a scientist that recently was talking about how when you do breath work, it can balance your entire nervous system, even balance your hormones
Mm.
in those moments that you do that by doing some sort of box breathing
Hmm.
technique. And as a matter of fact, I forgot to mention one of the things that I did do before going on stage was breath work.
Mm.
And if you
Yes.
do it well, you feel immediately elated, like you
Right.
can do it. As a matter of fact, that voice of imposter syndrome goes away.
Oh, wow. When you do
It's
the
it's
breath
been my
work.
experience, yes,
Right. It's
absolutely.
interesting because I have 2 primary breath works that I do. One is Wim Hof, and I used that. I crashed my mountain bike very badly 4 years ago and
Oh,
broke
wow.
my shoulder in 4 places on this side. I had to walk out, right? I was in a place where they couldn't come get me. And when I tried to sit up, I started to pass out. I had the yellow and black swirls because the pain was so intense. So I lay back down and I thought, okay, I have to get out of here. Like, there's nobody going to come get me. How can I do it? And I started doing the Wim Hof breathing, laying there on the ground, and I did 3 cycles of this Wim Hof breathing, and then I was able to stand up. It hurt like crazy, but I didn't pass out, and I made a sling out of the bike inner tube to hold my arm relatively still. And but then there was a sheriff deputy there that at least I could put an arm around on one side and walk slowly out. But I couldn't even sit up without passing out before, and then that breath work enabled me to do it. And the other one is the Ayurvedic. There's a retreat center, the Center for Artful Living in North Carolina. It's Ayurvedic, and it's box breathing with also Tony Robbins has made it famous, but it's Ayurvedic, this breathing where you grab up and come down, and then followed by Kriya Yoga, the Kriya Yoga breathing, and that's takes about 20 minutes when I do it, but it always releases things, always brings me into the present, like a supercharged meditation or something. Yeah, breath is the whole life comes much quicker than anything else, quicker than water, quicker than food. The
Yes.
breath is the life, and there's really something to that.
Mhm.
There's so many places that we could go with it, but I'm curious, like looking back now with the perspective of having had this health crisis, are there things you would have done differently even before in your career, in your life, that you've learned since you had this health crisis? Or are there things even in the last year that you've learned that you would have done differently once the health crisis arrived?
Well, the big thing for me was the not knowing, like, I don't know what's going on with me.
Mm.
And I think part of the process is the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And because the thing about staying on top of your health is that there's so many new things that are coming out there and so many doctors talking about different things. And just because people are talking about certain things doesn't mean that it works for everybody.
That's true too. Yeah.
So for me, it was try and test different things and keep the ones that are actually helping you because it's not one size fit all, right?
Right.
And the things that are working, continue to do those until if they don't work anymore, that's the thing that I've learned. Then drop those things and look for
Right.
more things or better things. But the thing that I had kind of gotten away was meditation.
Oh, you'd
And
gotten away from meditation before that,
yes,
so you'd gotten
yes,
too busy to meditate.
yes, or I wasn't going as deep. And I think they say prayer is talking to God, meditation is listening. And we have to do a lot more listening because our intuition, God is always speaking to us, but we
Right.
don't listen. And this is when bad things begin to happen one after another after another.
Yeah.
It's always guiding us.
Yeah. No,
And
that's for
so,
sure.
yeah, we have to listen.
So clearly you'd gotten away from meditation. At this Ayurvedic center, they said you have two choices in life. You either meditate or medicate. And it's sort of true because if you think about it, if you're not meditating, if you're not listening to your intuition, to God, to your higher self, you're numbing in one way or
Mhm.
another, whether it's TV or food or alcohol or drugs or sex. There's some way we're numbing out or disassociating. You said the biggest thing at that point is you didn't know what was going on. If you could have talked to yourself right before that had happened or 5 years before, what would you say now, or someone else that's in that situation, that everything is rocking along and you feel great, but what would you say now to be that you would do differently 5 years before that would maybe keep you from being in that situation without knowing? Like, is there some regular follow-ups, or is it just staying on the meditation, or is it having other tests and staying? Like, what would you say to somebody who's like hasn't had that experience yet, that maybe make that experience more useful for them and not as difficult to go through as yours was?
I would say find a professional that really knows what they're talking about in terms of health and that knows how to balance those hormones. Because even prior to this incident, years back, I was exercising extremely hard because I love working out, especially weights. And
Hmm.
I found myself going intense for 2 to 3 hours in the morning, and then I would sleep the rest of the day because I couldn't get up.
Mm.
And I would say regular blood work even
Mm.
before that time, and find someone that knows how to do it. A lot of traditional medicine or medical doctors don't do this. They
Yeah,
don't
this
practice
medicine
these kind of
2.0,
things.
this is not part of it, right? It has to be
Right,
medicine 3.0, if you will,
right.
functional medicine or full body medicine.
Yes, and so you never know what you don't know, and the thing that I did in the past that I will never do again is you guess which supplements you should be taking, and you just take them because you think they're helping. Don't do that because you might be over supplementing for certain things that may be detrimental. It is so important to get those labs done and really look at the evidence there that's clear. And for all you know, you might just need 1 or 2 supplements instead of the 15 that you're taking. That might
Right.
be actually being a detriment to your health.
But
So
so I
that's the
guess
one thing.
I heard 2 things inside there. One is be curious when things don't seem right, instead of
Yes,
just, like what you said, when you start sleeping the rest of the day, you knew something was wrong, but you didn't follow up on it really, right? So
yes,
be curious when something seems not right. Don't accept that just, "Oh, you're getting older," or "That's just the way that it is," or that you might get from your traditional doctor perhaps, or you
yes,
might tell yourself. And then diagnose, which every doctor will tell you, diagnose before you prescribe. Right? So really get your lab works done, but do the things that are even more detailed than would be done at your normal physical, like have the full blood markers and
yes.
hormones and how your cortisol level goes through the day, and really to understand what's going on with you.
Yes, I think there could be other things affecting your health. It could be environmental. My husband and I were submitted to the hospital several years ago for mold exposure. We almost died.
Mm.
And the doctors in the ER were kinda laughing at us saying, "Are you guys on drugs?" Because they did the blood work, but they couldn't see what was really going on, so because nothing was showing up. So
Mm.
we hired a mycotoxicologist, and we were full with mold in the brain. The
Yeah.
X-rays were like our brain was shrunk. I thought I was gonna die. And
Wow.
so I had to go through that whole process even before this happened with the
Right.
menopause. So and I'm in Florida, so it's very moldy, so my house is very mold proof because I've learned
Right.
all that. But not just mold, it could be other environmental factors, like, you could have, those metal implants that
Hmm.
could be
Yeah.
affecting the metals in your body and making you
Right.
feel more
Yeah.
tired.
If you have the old amalgama fillings in your teeth and so forth.
Yes. So I think it's really getting to know yourself and starting to ask yourself questions, and if there's symptoms, instead of going to a doctor that's gonna prescribe something to cover them up, it's always important to find out what's the source, like, where
What's
is
the
this
root
really
cause?
coming from?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and as you said earlier, everybody's different, right? Some people
Yes.
are very sensitive to electromagnetic radiation, and living near power lines might be incredibly damaging for them, where it might not be for other people. And that
Yes.
could also change over your life. Like if you've been exposed to Lyme's disease, it changes your autoimmune disease, your
Yes.
body a lot, even your sensitivity to radiation and so forth.
Yes.
So to
I'm actually
understand,
very sensitive to electromagnetic frequency, so I wear the devices and my entire house is grounded. And I actually take an EMF meter and it's 0 everywhere. So
oh wow,
when I
wow,
travel, I take that and put it in the hotel room to see where it's the highest impact and I sleep on the other side. But I
right,
still take my devices, including my phone has and scientifically proven you have to choose the right stuff that when you put some of this on, the brain goes from being red affected to when you put
right,
something like this to completely blue.
wow,
So, I'm one of those people that's very affected by EMFs.
right, right,
So, you have to, like, really start to and it's really the 2 things that can happen. You can either be defeated by it, or you
right,
can look at the reframe, like, "I'm gonna go on this journey and make it" "This is so fun that I could get to
right.
discover different things so that I can live a better life." There's 2 ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
There for every challenge, there's an opportunity. For every bad, there's a good. The
Yep.
problem is that when something bad happens to us, it's physically manifested and we see it there, and we don't even think about looking at the other side.
Yeah, and I think there's so much, I wanna call it fatalism.
Mhm.
There's so much in my own experience with health and what I see with older people around me, my parents' generation, is that, well, it's just the way that it is. Even when I go to see doctors, I ask, "Oh, you're just getting older." And some of it, okay, I have to wear reading glasses now. Yeah, that's probably true, but there's so much that I can affect. Like, if I look at people that are my age, there are people already well on decline,
Yes,
right? And I am right now working on being the most fit I've ever been in my life
that's
at
awesome.
52. I'm trying to qualify for Boston. I'm going to be running the rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon October 4th and fast
Wow.
marathon ever in April. Right. And I've been running since I was a young guy. So that's, like, so this is not about bragging. It's just about, like, I want to live a great life. I want to live right up till I die. And I want to be able to do the things I love to do right up till
Yes.
I die. Right. And there's a lot of choice that we have in that. And it starts, as you said, with the mindset, but there's a lot of physical stuff too that affects that. And to me, the things that aren't optional at all as we age. If you want to have a good health span, it's
Mhm.
exercise, right? It's some form of meditation and prayer and journaling, right? And
Yes.
it's what you eat, right? And
Yes.
it's not mean that you have to be perfect all the time, but to recognize the things that are joy foods, if you will,
Mhm.
and have just a very little bit of that or alcohol or whatever, if at
Yes.
all, right?
Yes. I actually have my journal back here. Journaling is so powerful. I do 3 things: reflect, release, and request. How do you call when you go to see someone to help you?
Therapy. That's
Yes.
therapy. Yeah.
And when you ask questions, you get the answers and
Yes.
it's a really powerful way to keep you alive and
Yeah.
going and inspired.
Yeah, no, I love that. So reflect, release,
Release and
request.
request.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's really great. I've found, and it started by accident. Like, I used to have my only solitude time used to be on long haul airplane flights, and that's when I would start to write. And I would have this, what to me, where it's coming from, I'm not sure, but like I would write a question, and then the answer would come, and then I would read it, right?
Can
Whether
I
it's
tell you
intuition or
something?
whether it's God or I don't know what. Now I can do that almost on demand, like almost daily, right? Where I can, okay, what's part of my journaling prayer process in the morning is I always ask, okay, God, what do you want me to be today? I start with that. What do you want me to
Yes.
be? Right. And
It
today was to be present, powerful, and
Mhm.
playful. Right. That
Yes.
was the be this morning. But I like those. I haven't thought of that. The request part is the one I actually shy away from, and I don't know why. That's one I'm going to add. So thank you.
I'm gonna share before I jumped in the podcast, I wrote a lot of I ams
Oh, great.
to ground myself, to be present, to be able to have this beautiful conversation with you. But the one thing that you said, because I travel a lot for speaking, I don't know what it is, but when I'm up there, I'm more creative than anything.
Interesting.
I don't know what it is, but I love it.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I definitely don't miss the wear on my body from changing time zones that I did so much. And I have a very hard time to give myself permission to just be off duty, and that was
Mhm.
one of the spaces where, before they had internet on planes or not very much, especially over the long haul oceans, there wasn't. I was in my own time, in my own
Mhm.
space, and it gave
Yes.
me freedom to meditate for long times or journal for long times or watch a movie, heaven forbid, right? And just
Mhm.
relax. So there is something about that, whether it's also having to do with some physical altitude or something too. I don't know, but there's definitely something to that.
Yes.
Where do you think your life would be today if you hadn't made this transition the last year on your health? Where do you think your life would be today?
I can't even answer that because I haven't thought of it, but now that you're asking it, I feel like I would be not alive. I wouldn't be able to be present or to just show up because the moment that you decide to change is because you've suffered so much that you say enough is enough. So I'm willing to do anything, whatever it takes to come out of that,
Mm,
to achieve a certain balance and continue to seek that balance.
mm,
The struggle for me was immense that it's hard for me to answer that. If I wouldn't have done anything, I would probably wouldn't be speaking to you today.
mm. So you would not be in your health span, at least. Maybe still your lifespan, but not your health span.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a real urgent call to action.
Yes, you have to really know the balance and know how to fill your cup to be able to show up for in the world, to be
Mm,
able to help other people fill their cups, and that's what I do.
absolutely. No, that's so important. And I actually was writing on that. I have a blog called Friday Reflections. The one I'll put out today is about, this thing about a lot of people feel guilty for taking care of themselves, right?
Oh,
But if you boil down the whole message that Jesus had, the whole message is love God, connect with God, and then people think the next one is love others, but it's not love others. It's love others how as you love yourself. So
Mhm.
the second one is love yourself. Connect to source, connect to God.
Yes.
Use that to love yourself, to fill yourself up, to fill up your cup
Yes.
so that you can fill up other
Mhm.
cups, that you
Yes.
can love others the way you are loving yourself. If you're not loving yourself well, loving others that way is not a good thing.
Right. It's not selfish. A lot of people take care of others,
First.
and it's time to take care of yourself first.
Yeah. Because as you said, if you didn't make your health a priority, you couldn't even have this conversation with me today. And how many people is this going to help that hear your
Yes.
story? Right.
Yes, absolutely.
So really important to do that. No, I think that's great. I'm curious a little bit, like if you look back, because you have such an amazing story, if you look back to your experience in the orphanage, right, in the excruciating circumstances in which you grew up, being hungry and having to hunt for food and not having parents and having a whole bunch of siblings that you probably both were taken care of by as well as took care of, I'm
Mhm.
sure. What do you think is the biggest thing that allowed you or that you learned in that situation and that growing up, whether it was all the way through your basketball career, being homeless again, even after college? What was it in all of that that gave you the mettle, the structure, the fortitude, the persistence, the mental strength to overcome all of that instead of succumb to
Mhm.
all of that?
For me, it was hope for something better.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have this power, but I had the opportunity to use my mind to see myself happy and be these characters that I stepped into
Right.
to get myself out of those situations. And I found that bodily pain was momentary. Even though we would go hungry for 2 or 3 weeks, I became a hunter, I wasn't willing to sacrifice not using my mind to believe that I could be and do and become something bigger
Mm-hmm.
in the future so that I could come back and show everybody else that I was growing up with that it was possible. I will tell you that most of the people that I grew up with, and there are 68 adopted siblings and then 200 other kids that live there, most of them have ended up in prison, cartels,
Mm-hmm.
prostitution, drugs, and people often ask me, "How did you do it?" And I really believe that it comes down to choice. Like, you have to choose that you don't wanna suffer. You have to choose to believe that there's something better. And I held that so steadfast in my mind for the 18 years that I lived there, that nothing could waver me, but I knew that when chaotic situations like physical abuse, things like that happen, they would pass,
Mm.
but that I could keep myself happy in my inner kingdom.
So you went to this inner space, this where you had strength, where you had this constant belief and hope that things could be better. You mentioned also that there was other characters, and probably at that time it wasn't Myovic.
No.
Who were the characters that you connected with as a child that
Mhm.
helped you to have the mental capacity and strength to go inward instead of reacting to what was outward?
Chief Indian,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan, because I saw him play when I was in junior high in one of the TVs at school. That's how I became a good basketball player. Anything that I could feel myself, I would also see myself as like the future Maggie in a place where she was or that I was, because I would see myself presently, this figure of not only hope for others, but powerful,
Mm-hmm.
inspirational.
Mm.
And I never forget one moment when my father, our caregiver, he was a medical doctor, and he would give medical attention for free to the poor on Sundays from 5 AM to midnight sometimes. And one of those days, he came out the clinic, it was the last patient, and it was a mother with 2 children, and I was walking down the clinic, the main house about a quarter mile up the hill in the mountains, and he said to me, "Do you see how I can tell that these people are extremely poor?" And I said, "No." He says, "Look at their bellies are malnourished. Look at their hair is very thin. Look at their shoes." And so he said, he turned to me and he squeezed my head really. He was a big guy. I thought he was gonna pop my
Mm.
head. And he says, "I don't ever want you to be that poor."
Mm.
And then he walked towards them and gave them some money. I heard him say something for a taco and a bus fare because they came with nothing. And I remember turning around and starting to walk up to the main house of the orphanage and looking up to the skies and thinking, someday I'm going to be and do something bigger than myself, and I'm going to be able to share it with them. And I remember vividly that moment because I had a stick and I was poking leaves through it. I
Mhm.
still remember exactly where I was and where I was claiming that
Mm.
divinity that I am. That was a pivotal moment for me. I was about 8, 9 years old.
Mm. So in that point, something in your psyche, something in your spirit changed, Like, you
Yes,
knew at that point, no matter what the physical appearance is, whatever the outward appearance is, whatever suffering I go through in this body, there's something bigger being built in the
yes,
mental creation, the spiritual creation first, and that's gonna come, and I'm gonna
and
do something.
it didn't matter if it was gonna be 10 more years of being there.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think that's super important. Like the people, whether it's Viktor Frankl from the concentration camps or not McCain, but the other guy, I can't remember his name right now, from Vietnam, where he's held in the prison of Vietnam, is it's not, if you tell yourself it's going to be a certain way by a certain time, you let yourself down and people often die. I'm going to be out of here by Christmas. And then when Christmas comes and goes and you're not out, then you die.
Yes,
But if you hold on to the, I'm living through this no matter what,
yes,
even if it's 1 year or 10 years or 20 years, that's the people that live in those situations.
yes.
So if there's somebody that I don't know if they would hear this or not, but that's in a situation that's in an orphanage that's really tough or a very abusive home or something that hears this, what would you tell them to hold on to? What would you tell them to, how would you advise them, someone that's 8, 9, 10 years old, to grab onto something that allows them to get through that situation for the next 1 to 5 or 10 years?
There's a phrase that I would tell myself, and that is, "If not this, then something better." To always be looking for that something better.
Mm,
When I was recruited to play basketball for the Mexican national team, I went to Mexico City. They loved me. They said, "We wanna have you play with the team." Didn't hear back from them for 3 months, and one day, my caregiver introduces American football, and my brothers and I start to play, and I break my collarbone.
mm,
And I go to him, he's a doctor, and he was really rough. He stretched my shoulders, and he said, "Your dreams are over."
mm.
And
And
I
this was
started to
your
cry a little
adopted
bit.
dad. This was the guy that was running the orphanage, the doctor.
Yes. And I remember going like this, my arms in the sides, and saying, "There's gotta be something better. If this happened, there's gotta be something better, no matter how long it takes." 3 days later, the Mexican national team called, and I really felt it then. But I would say 4 to 6 months later, they took a bus with all 68 of us, and they toured the United States to raise funds for their nonprofit, and we were asked to come to a picnic in West Virginia, and it was outdoors, outside of a Catholic church. There was a basketball court outside. As soon as we pulled up, the bus parked, and me and my brother saw the basketball. We ran and started to play. That day, there happened to be the coach of the University of Charleston, and she saw me play. She went to my caregiver and told him I want her to come play for me on a scholarship. If I would have listened to what he told me that my dreams were over and not played that day, I wouldn't be speaking to you today.
Mm,
And what I can say is that not playing for the Mexican national team is the best thing that never happened to me
right.
because I would be there.
I love that. The best thing that ever happened to me. But that conviction that if not this, then something better, right? That's a
Yes,
thing to hold on to. Whatever it is, whether even if it's something good, even if it's something bad, if something, then something better, then something better. If it's not this, then something better. And to know that there's the something better speaks to me. And so I think it would speak to someone else 8 or 9 years old in a tough situation. So thank you for that. Thank
yes.
you, Maggie. I really appreciate that.
Never.
Good advice as a whole, whether it's about this health issue, whether it's about growing up, but something that they could take away and start doing it. Anybody could use and anybody can do today to make their life a little bit better where they are. What would that one thing be?
To know that wherever you are, wherever you begin, does not define where you end. So no matter what circumstance, no matter how you grow up, no matter what health issues you have, does not define where you end. And that we have the responsibility. It is up to us. Nobody's going to do it for us.
Mm, mm,
To be mindful, to listen, and to do the inner work. And I'm not just talking physical, I'm talking spiritual,
hmm
mental work, to have the courage to at least take baby steps of that courage to move yourself forward. And when you see those results, remember to celebrate
mm,
because we don't celebrate our
mm.
victories enough. We don't pat ourselves on the back enough. When you celebrate, you find more things to celebrate for.
I love that. I love that to remember to celebrate. That's something that I need to hear for sure. And you talked about doing the inner work. If someone's just starting out, what was the one thing you would say? Would it be to meditate for 5 minutes or to start to journal for 5 minutes or to start to go for a walk? What's the inner work where someone should start it if they're really stuck right now?
A lot of setbacks and even disease in life have happened to us because of some type of emotional connection to the past.
Hmm
And there's much more to that. What I would say is journal because you can spill everything out, and when you ask questions, the answers will come when
So
you're ready.
start to journal, start to write longhand on paper.
Yes. And if you can't do that, look for someone that you can talk to that can help you bring those things out and help you with that journey of healing, because you have to heal the inner part of yourself to be able to heal the external, the physical part of yourself as well.
Yeah, 100% agree. So you would say to start journaling or talking to somebody if you don't feel like you can write. And I'm going back to the 3 R's you talked about, but you're really focusing on the release. The healing part is about the release,
Yes.
right? The right stuff that you feel bad about, or you're ashamed about, or holds you back, or your shame thoughts, or your critic parts, or whatever's coming up.
Yes.
To either share those with somebody like a step 4 in a 12-step program,
Yes.
or on your journal pages.
It's the question of where is it coming from?
Hmm.
And the more quality of a question you ask, the better quality answer you're gonna get.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wow. Yeah, amazing conversation here, Maggie. I really appreciate it. Where can listeners find out more about you and what you do when you're not on Life in Transition podcast?
Yes. Yes, they can go to maggiecook.com, and it's Maggie with 1 G, COOK.com. That's my website, everything's there, everything that I do.
Okay. Well, wonderful. I'm blown away by you, by your story. Really amazing. And then where you've come from, but also what you're doing with it, right? And how you're giving back. It's really the commitment and love you have for yourself first, but also in order that you can help others, right? That you can continue to be a force for good, which you
Yes,
couldn't be if you don't exist or if you're not healthy and
yeah,
energized. So I really appreciate you being with me today. Thank you for taking the time and sharing this amazing light that you have to share with the world.
yes. I just wanna say thank you so much for having me on your podcast, because what I've spoken to you here, are things that I've never, ever talked about before.
Mm,
So thank you for bringing that out in me so that perhaps someone out there who's listening could maybe take one piece and start working on themselves to become better human beings.
it's worth the journey. I can tell you,
Yes,
I'm a work in progress, but it's it's worth the journey. Thank you so much, Maggie. It's
yes.
my pleasure, and really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.
I can't wait to hear what action you are taking. Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online, and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.